Hello friends, I'm Sanket. Our today's topic is the CRUD operation using SQLite. It means the DML operation using SQLite library. So now in our previous session we had already discussed about the iOS local data storage. So now here you can see there are the different types of local store are there. It's the SQLite, property list, core data and NS user default. So now here in today's topic we had implement about the SQLite using the CRUD operation. So now here first of the what is SQLite? So now SQLite is a powerful lightweight C library that is embedded in an iOS applications. Now this is a use in a various application across various platforms including Android and iOS. Now SQLite is used for the low level relational database. So now here in this topic we have implemented one database application using SQLite library. So now let's try to create. So now here I am creating one new project. So simply create a new Xcode project, the single view application and click on next. Now here write down your application name. So now here my application name is database application. Click on next and create. Okay, so now for the DML operation, it means simply insert, update, delete, select operation using SQLite library in iOS application. So now before we start, first we have required some functionalities and feature for this application. It means whenever you use a database application, first we have required a database file. Okay, so now for the database application we have required your database. So now how to create, how to use the database? So now simply here for the database creation in Mac we have one tools is available. It's called DB browser for SQLite. You have to also download in the Google. So now in these tools I'm creating one database. So now how to create? So now simply go to file. Here you can see the new database. So now here write down your database name. So now here for example my database name is DB applications. Okay, whatever you want according to your application you have to write your database name, then set the location. So now here I'm using its desktop and click on save. Then after you have to see one another pop-up window for the table creation. So now database, it's a collection of different types of tables. So now here I'm creating the database, then after you have to create table. So now write down your table name. So now here I'm creating one table name, it's a students. So now here my table name is students. Now in table, so now again table, it's a collection of related data. It means collection of rows and column. So now how to create column first? So now here you can use this option, add fields. So now write down your first field, it's the ID. So now then the type of your column. So now here ID is always integer. Now you can also use the different constraint like not null, primary key, auto increment, unique key as per your requirement. But here right now I'm creating a base table, so now it's not requirement. So now create a second field. So now here my second field name is name. So now name is in a text format. Now then after we have required one another field as a city. Now again it's a text. Okay, so now here you can see your create query has been automatically created. Okay, now just click on OK. Now so now your table has been created successfully. So now you can see in your database there are one table, the name with students. Okay, so now in this table there are three different fields. It means column, ID, name and city. So now your database and table has been created successfully. Then after, you can see the various options are there, like as browse data. It means you have to insert simple record, okay, in your table. So now here you can use this option. For example, new record. So now write down your ID. For example, one. Here my first is a Sanket. So now city, for example, here Ahmedabad. Okay, so now here in your table there are single sample record is there. So now here I am creating your database for your application. Now how to use this database in your application? So now simply just close this. Now make sure it's mandatory to save. Okay, now this is your database file. Now this database file is used in our application. Now again, before we implementation the database, so now first we have required your database file and SQLite library. Okay, so now in your application, first you have to add your database file. So now how to add your database file? So now simply select your application folder and then right click. Now select the add file. So now first select this option as a destination copy item. Then after select your database file. So now go to your desktop. Now this is my database file. So now select this file and click on add. Okay, so now your application consists your database files. So now here I am add my database file in my projects. Now second requirement is, okay, whenever you use a database application using SQLite library, so now you have to require your SQLite library in your projects. So now how to add library in your projects? So now just go to your root directory. Okay, now simply just go to build phases option. Now in this option you have to see in the third option, link binary with libraries. Now just click on add button. Okay, so now here you can see there are lots of frameworks and libraries are there. So now here we have to require SQL library. So now simply search, it's a SQL. Now here you can see there are two different libraries are there for the SQL. You have to use any one because both are same. Okay, so now here I am add a library. Okay, now when you are add your SQL library, so now you can see in your application folder, okay, one folder is created, it's called framework. Okay, now in this folder you have to see your SQLite library. Okay, so now these two are the required functionality before we implementing your database application. Okay, so now our first requirement is, again I repeat, our first requirement is to add your database file in your projects, and the second requirement is to add your SQLite library in your projects. Okay, so now let's start our implementation. So now again in your database application, first I'm designing my screen according to my database and the table. So now just go to your main.storyboard here. So now here I am designing first with the background color. Now I am using a text fill. So now here I am creating a three different text fill according to my table column. So now this is my first text fill. Then after I am creating another text fill and also creating third text fill. Okay, now set the text fill property. So now here I'm using alignment as a center. Now the next property I'm using, it's a placeholder. So now first text fill for the ID, second text fill for the name, and third text fill for the city. Okay, now again I'm designing some button for the DML operation. So now here I'm designing one button. Okay, now change the button title. So now here first button for the insert operation. Now change the background color of this button. So now this is my first button. Now then after we have required for same operation update and delete. So now here I am creating another button. So now here just change your button title. So now this button for the update operation. Now again we have to require another button for this delete operation. So now here I am creating one button for this delete operation. So now here I am creating one button again. Okay, so now here it's okay. Now let's try to change your button title. So now here I'll change my button title here. So now this button for the delete operation. So now here right now I'm creating three operation: insert, update and delete according to this button action. So now let's try to implement your text field outlet and button action one by one. So now here I'm creating your text field outlet first. So now it's a txt id, and then I'm creating txt name, then I'm creating txt city. Okay, so now here I'm creating outlet of your text field. So now your id, name and city. Now then after we'll create button action. So now here btn save, then I'm creating action of the button update. So now btn underscore update, then create your delete button action. So now here btn underscore delete. Okay, so now here I'm creating, means I'm designing your whole screen according to our requirement. So now there are three text field for the id, name and city, and the three button for the our dml operation like insert, update and delete. Now in this application, so now in your database application, before we implementation such kind of operation like insert, update, delete, first you have to require to create your dml operation functions. Okay, so now how to create, how to implement it. So now here again this application is created with a three-tier architecture. So now here I am using one architecture, it's called three-tier. Okay, so now what is the advantage of three-tier architecture? What is the three-tier architecture? How to implement it? So now according to our database application requirement, first you have to implement your database operation like DML services. For example, it's the insert, update and delete operation. So now according to our three-tier architecture, first I have to create one file. Okay, so now create a new file and now select as a cocoa touch class. So now first make sure your class has been created with ns object type, because it's a must required to create your three-tier class using ns objects. Now write down your class name. So now here my class name is dml operation, then click on next and create. Okay, so now this class is used to implement our dml services. Okay, so now it means according to this class we have to implement our operation like insert, update, delete and select using this library. Okay, so now let's start with first import your SQLite library, because here it's required to implement your DML operation class functions and modules. Okay, so now those class functions methods are from your SQLite library. So now it's required to import SQLite. Now before we implementation, first you have to get your application path. So now here again our major requirement for the database application. So now whenever you install your application, at that time with your application you have to also install your database file in your device. It means your simulator or your physical device, it's an iPhone or iPad. Okay, so now first you have to require copy this file. It means copy this database file into your device with your application installation. So now how to copy this file? So now before, first you have to get your application location. Okay, first you have to get your application path. So now how to generate your application paths? So now for the generating any background process, any background services, we have used app delegate class because it's a most requireable and the continually functionality according to did finish launching with options. Okay, so now here I'm creating one objects. So now here I'm creating one string object, it's called str path. Okay, now then after I'm creating one function for the database copy. Okay, and now this function will be called with our did finish launching option. It means this function, because I have to require this implementation in background mode. Okay, so now at that time means before your main.storyboard is loaded, this function will be called. It means did finish launching with option. Using this function, we had already called this function, it means database copy. So now let's try to implement this function. So now first get your application path. Now here I am creating one object as a path. So now how to get your application path? So now we have one function, it's a ns search path for directories in domain. So now this function is returning a string array. So now you can see, okay, braces of this arguments. So now here I'm using this function. Now you can see again this function is returning three different arguments. So now first is directory. It means how to access your directory. So now here you can use, it's a document directory. Okay, so now here I'm using, it's a document directory. Now second argument is how to access your application folder, subfolder or file. So now here I am using, it's a user domain mask, and now the third argument, it's a boolean. So now boolean is always written with a true. Then after this function is returning the array. So now here I am written as a zero index. Okay, it means in your background, in your device, your application is installed with a various folders. So now in background your application has been create a 4 different folder. It means document folder name, one is, first folder is document, second folder is library, third folder is system data, and fourth folder is temp. Okay, so now here we have required our document folder. It means in document folder you have to copy your database file. So now here I am accessing your document folder. So now here I am using the index of your first folder, it means 0. So now here you all are heard about the array index. So now array is always started with 0. Now then after here I am using str path. So now this path I am stored in our str path object. So now str path equals to path, but this path is written till document, but we have to require in document our this database file. So now how to concat, means how to concat this file with document. So now simply your path plus your database file name. So now here my file name is db applications.db. Okay, now then print your path for your reference. So now let's try to check first your application path is getting or not. So now simply run your application. Now this functionality is most required before implementation of our operation. It means DML operation, because it's a required process for the database application. So now you have to create first, means you have to get your application path, then after you have to implement your DML operation. Okay, so now here I'm running my application. Now just hold it. Here I'm printed your application path. So now here go to your console part. Now you can see, okay, now here you can see your application path is created. Okay, now here actually something went wrong. Here for example I am appending also my path, but here the path is generated only document till. Now let's try. So now how to access this path? Okay, so now simply just select this path, right click, services, and select this show in finder option. Okay, so now here you can see in your background your application has been created a 4 different folder. So now first it's a document, it means it's a 0 index. Now second it's library, system data, and then tab. So now I want your database file in our document folder. So now how to copy your database file here? So now here first I am generating a full path. So yeah, actually here I am printed our str path instead of path. So now this str path is returning the full path with your document slash your database file. So now again let's check. Okay, so now you can see, okay, your documents, then after your database file. It means in your document folder we have to require to add, okay, your database file. So now again let's check again till document. So now open show in finder. Now open your document folder. So now here you can see right now your document folder is blank, but here I want our database file because it's required to generate your DML operation here. So now how to copy that file? So now simply here I'm using first. Okay, so now first you have to require to access this path as a programmatically. Okay, so now how to access this path in programmatically? So now here we have one class, it's a file manager dot default. Okay, now for this class we have to use one method, it's a file exit at path. So now your full path is stored in your str path. So now here your str path, but here actually my condition is if it's not there. Okay, so now here you can see now till document your path is, it's a logical. Okay, right now your document folder is blank, but here I'm adding your application database file into your document folder. So now first my condition is, okay, if this file is not there. So now here I'm using not equals to. So now then after, so now here I have to require this file. So now first select this file from your projects. So now how to access this directory? So now simply I'm creating one objects, it's local. Now how to access this directory programmatically? So now here we have used one class, it's a bundle dot main. Now how to select your particular files? So now here we have required one method, it's a path for resource of type. So now path for resource, it means your file name, which file you want. So now here we have to use our database file. So now the file name is db application. Then of type, of type, it means your file type. So now here my file type is TB. Okay, now then after your file is selected, now just copy this file into your document folder. So now how to copy that? So now again I'm accessing this directory. So now here I'm using file manager, again file manager dot default dot copy item 8 path. So now here you can see this method is returning with the throw statement. Okay, so now throw, it means it's a work with, it's a mark with try. Now try and throw, in between you have to access a catch block statement. So now whenever you use a kind of, means such types of method, it's returning throw. So now you have to mark with try. Okay, but whenever you use a try statement, so now you have to create a do block in Swift with the catch. Okay, so now catch is always returning your exception. So now here my exception is error dot localized description, and your try part is always bind with your do block. Okay, so now here your selected file, so now 2, it means here you have to pass your this object, it means local to path. To path, it means where to store. So now you have to access your document folder. So now how to access it? So now using your full path, it means str path. Okay, now this condition will be true, it means your database is copied successfully. Okay, now let's try to check. So now run your application. Now let's check your document folder again, your database files is there or not. So now again, okay, so now you can see your condition is executed successfully. So now you can see the statement, your database is copied. Now let's check in practical. So now go to document folder. So now just select this path services and show in finder. Now open your document folder. So now here, yeah, you can see, okay, your database file has been copied successfully. Okay, now here for the DML operation using SQLite library, so now it's required to access your document folder including your database file. So now this is the major operation before implementation of the CRUD using SQLite. So now here this is our the database copy function we have to implement as per our requirement. Now your database file is copied successfully in your document folder. Now our next step is to implement your operation according to your insert, update, delete and select. So now for this operation here I am creating one class, it's a DML operation. Now what is the use of this class? Because here I am using a 3-tier architecture. So now here I am creating one function for this operation. So now here my function name is DML services, and now this function is required one argument. So now here I am creating one argument as a query with type string. Now this function is returning a boolean value. Okay, so now here I am creating one function. Now function name is DML services. Now this function with one argument, it's a query. Now before we implementing this operation, okay, first you have to get your application path for this operation. So now this operation is where to occur and how to execute on particular database. So now simply first get your application path. So now here just copy this 2 line and now here implemented with this function. Okay, so now here I am using str path. So now here I am declaring str path as a globally. Okay, now Let's try to implement this function. So now your function is returning a boolean parameter. Okay, so now here I'm creating one objects as a boolean. So now here I am declaring your status value by default as a false. Okay, then after we have to also require one object as a statement objects. Which type? So now here the statement type is opaque pointer. Okay, so now here I am declaring with default nil. Okay, now this object is must required to implementation your SQLite function. Okay, so now how to implement this function? So now let's start with first the connection. So now whenever you use your database applications, so now here let's try, I just fixed this str. Okay, yeah, here my actually variable name is str. Okay, sorry, now I'm changing. Now let's try to implement. So now whenever you implement your database operation like insert, update, delete, select using SQLite 3 library, first you have to require to check your database connection. Okay, so now how to check your database connection? So now here we have one function, it's SQLite 3 underscore open. Now these functions are from this library, it means our SQLite 3 library. So now it's required to import this library, then after you have to access this function. So now for the accessing to check your database connection, we have one function SQLite 3 underscore open. Now this function consists of two different argument. Now first is your file name, it means your database file. So now here my database file is on str path. Then after our second argument is opaque pointer, it means your statement. Okay, just remember this object is very important for the implementing the any function. Now here this object is here returning with double p symbol. Double p, it means it's a pointer precaution. So now here whenever you use as a object as a pointer, at that time you have to use the symbol of pointer, it means ampersand. Okay, according to this symbol you have to use your statement object, it means opaque pointer with ampersand sign. Now here again this condition is executed with SQLite OK module. Now if this condition, it means your database connection will be open successfully, then after what should require? So now here let's try to validate your query. It means whenever you create, it means execute any query like insert, update and delete. So now that query is validate or not, it means according to syntax, according to table name, according to fields name. So now we have required one another function SQLite 3 underscore prepare v2. So now this function is used to validate your query. So now where to store the query? So now here whenever you call this function, this call is consist your query using this argument. Now let's try to implement different argument. So now our first argument is opaque pointer. So now opaque pointer, it means your statement objects. Now second argument is unset pointer, it means ZSQL. So now for the validate your query, you have to pass your query argument of your function. So now here I am pass my query argument. Now next argument is n byte, it means it's a length of your query. Okay, so now here in SQLite library, the by default length of any query is -1. Okay, now then after our next argument is again opaque pointer with the pointer precaution. So now at that time you have to use statement with ampersand symbol. So now here I am using ampersand statement. Now the next argument is always nil. So now it's not required. So now just write down as a nil. Now again I am using this condition using SQLite OK module. Now if your query has been validated successfully, it means your this condition is executed successfully. So what should required next? So now here I have to change my status value, it's a true. Okay, so now here you can see your default status value is false, but when your query has been validated successfully, then your status value will be changed, it's false to true. Okay, then after we have to require one another functions. So now SQLite 3 underscore step. So now this function is validate your table structure. Okay, so now here you have to pass your OPQ pointer, it means your statement objects. Okay, now then after what should required our next? So now when your query has been validated successfully, then after let's try to execute your query. So now for execute your query we have to require one another function SQLite 3 underscore finalize. So now this function is help to execute your query in your database engine. So now here again you have to pass your statement objects, and now the last function is after execution your query close your database connection. So now using SQLite 3 underscore close, SQLite 3 underscore close. So now again you have to pass your statement objects. Okay, so now it's done. Okay, now see again you have to see in one error the missing return in function expected a return boolean because your function is returning a boolean value. So now here I am returning your boolean argument with the status. So now here you have to use return as a status. Okay, so now this function is ready to create, means ready to operate your insert, update and delete operation. So now see the advantage of three-tier architecture. So now here I am creating a single function, it's a DML service, but using this function you have to operate your insert, update and delete operation. Okay, so now this is the advantage of your three-tier application. It means whenever you execute any operation like insert, update, delete in your application, at that time you have to call only this function, it's a DML service. So now let's try to implement our insert, update, delete. So now go to your view controller. So now here your button click. So now let's try to implement this button click. So now on this button I have to store some data in your database. It means using this button I have to insert records in your database. So now how to insert? So now simply first I'm creating one object, it's the str insert. So now using this button you have to insert any records. So now here you have to pass, means you have to write your insert query. So now this query will be executed on button click. Okay, so now how to insert? So now here write down your insert query. So now insert into table names. Okay, so now let's verify first in your database, okay, what is my table name. So now simply open your database. So now open your database file. Now before we implement, first you have to verify your table name. So now here you can see my table name is students, S capital and students. Okay, so now here I am using as table name. So now here insert into table name. So now here my table name is students values. So now here I am inserting my value. So now those value from your text field. So now here how to use this text field value in this insert query. So now let's start with our first text field, txt id dot text. Then after we have to also insert your name and city. So now your name and city both are in a string. So now how to access it? So now using a single quote. So now here I am using your second text field txt name dot text, then after I am using third text field txt city dot text. Okay, now as per your reference, please print your query because it's required in future error exception. So now here, now your insert query is ready. Okay, now let's try to implement with your DML service operation. Okay, because this query is executed with this function, because your entire DML operation code is here. Okay, so now how to execute this query using this function? So now here you have to first create your class objects, because this is your function. So now function, it means it's a child part. Now this function within your class, it means created in a DML operation class. So now you have to create first your class objects. So now here I am creating one object of your DML operation class. Okay, so now here I am creating object as a DML of the DML operation. Now then after using this class object, you have to access your class function, it means this DML service. Now here you can see this function is returning with the boolean value. So now here I am access this boolean value. Here I am also creating one another object, it's a result. Using I am accessing this function. So now DML dot DML services. So now here I am calling this function, means DML services, it's from the DML operation class. Now here this function with a query argument. So now here write down your query. So now query is from the your str insert objects. Okay, now how to check this condition? It means your query is successfully executed or not. So now here I am applying one simple condition. So now if your result value is true, okay, it means record inserted. Okay, now if your result value will be true, means your record inserted successfully, otherwise you have to generate your exception, it means error. Okay, according to requirement. So now here I am simply just printed error. Okay, so now your insert operation is ready to fly. So now here your insert operation is successfully created. Now according to 3-tier architecture, for our another operation like update and delete, so now you have to simply just copy this code and paste into your update, because for insert, update and delete operation you have to call same function, it means DML service. So now here no need to required to write another code. Okay, so now for the update operation, the entire code will be same. You have to change simple just your update query. So now here first change my object also. So now here str update, now here str update, then str update. So now write down your update query. So now update table name. So now here my table name is students. Okay, make sure just verify your table name from your database. Yeah, S is capital. So now students, update table name, set. Okay, what should require to update a field? So now here I am required to update name. Okay, so now name is updated via your txt name dot text. Okay, I'll to update also my city. So now here write down as a city, then your city value from the txt city dot text. Now where? So now where id equals to here txt id dot text. So now here in update, your name and city value will be updated according to your id. Okay, now then entire operation will be sham. Okay, now same condition you have to execute it. If your condition will be executed successfully, it means your record updated. So now just change your statement. Okay, now so now again your update operation is also ready to execute. Now for the delete operation, so now let's try to implement. So now again same code, so simple, just copy this code and paste. Okay, now you have to change only your delete query. Okay, so now here first I'm changing my delete objects. Okay, so now according to your delete, so now write down your delete query. So now delete from table name. So now my table name is students, where id equals to, whenever you select any id from the user side, so now those record will be deleted from your database. So now here I'm using txt dot text. Okay, now then after your query is ready, now ready to operate. Now same condition, again this condition will be true, it means record deleted. Okay, now again here I'm implementing some another operation like that. If your condition will be true, it means you have to print your record inserted, then after your entire text field will be blank automatically. So now here your txt text dot, for the blank you have to use simple blank space. Now again txt name dot text, now txt city dot text. Okay, now same text field will be blank in our update execution. It means your record is updated successfully, then after your entire text field will be blank. Now then after you have to also blank your text field according to delete operation. So now here I am implementing our operation like insert, update and delete using single function. So now this is the power of 3-tier architecture. So now let's try to check. So now run your application, your entire operation will be worked or not. So now here I'm using simple insert, update and delete operation on button click. So now run your application. So now first on the console part, first you have to select your database. So now just open your database first. So now so in finder, now open your database file, and then after, okay, now let's check on live. So now here in your table we have to insert one sample record. Okay, now let's try to add one new record. So now let's start with id 2. Okay, so now here actually my keyboard is not working, so just wait. Okay, so now here 2. Now for example name, so now here the student name is Mitesh. Now here I'm inserting the city. So now here I'm inserting city, it's a Pune. Now click on save. Okay, so now see, just go to your Xcode, you can see your entire query will be executed successfully. It means your condition will be true, record inserted, then after your text field is also blank. Now let's check your database. So now just refresh here. Okay, now you can see, okay, you have to insert your second record. So now second record inserted successfully. Now again I am entering a next record. So now for example here the student name is Prasid and the city, so now here his city name is Bombay. Now simply click on save. Now just refresh. So now you can see, okay, you can see your third record inserted successfully. Now again I'm inserting the fourth record. So now here, for example, here I'm using the student name is Ramesh and the city name is, for example, here I'm using Surat. Now click on save. Now just refresh. So now you can see your fourth record has been inserted successfully. Now here I'm using fifth record, and now the name with Sejal and the city. So now here I'm using the city, it's a Vapi, and now just click on save button. So now just refresh your database. So now you can see. Okay, so now here I am inserting a total 5 records in your database using iOS application. So now here you can see your insert operation will be your insert operation is working successfully. Now let's try with update and delete operation. So now here I'm updating some value, like for example I'm updating our second number record, the name Mitesh and the city Pune. So now here first I have to update the record. So now write down your ID first. So now I have to update name Mitesh to Hitesh, and I'm update city Pune to Rajkot. Okay, now just click on update. Okay, now again just refresh. So now you can see your second record is updated successfully with new value. Okay, now again I'm updating a last record. For example, the old value is Sejal and the city name is Vapi. So now here I'm updating the value, the ID is 5th. Now here I'm updating name Sejal to Avni and the name Vapi to Baroda. Okay, now simply just click on update. Now just refresh your database. So now you can see, okay, your 5th number record has been updated successfully. So now here our update operation is working successfully. Now let's try with delete. So now here I am deleting 4th number record, this, okay, using this button click. So now simply write down your ID, because our query is delete from table name where ID equals to that. Okay, so now here I am deleting our 4th record. So simply just write down your 4th. Now click and delete and the refresh. Now you can see your 4th record has been deleted. Now again I am deleting a second record. So now write down your ID second, just click on delete, and now simply refresh your database. So now you can see. Okay, so now in your database we have to see a live preview, insert, update and delete. So now your entire operation will be work fine. Okay, so now here I am using insert, update and delete operation using single function. Okay, so now this is the DML operation. Now what about the select? It means how to retrieve your data, means how to retrieve this data on your iPhone screen. Okay, so now let's try to implement. So now here I'm using a table view. For example, here on table view I have to display the entire database data. So now here I'm designing one table view. Okay, so now here just drag and drop the table view on your screen. So now let's try to design. Okay, so now here I am changing the height and width of this table. So now before we implementation table, you have to remember this thing. First you have to bind the data source and delegate of your table, because it's a required. Okay, now then after, first I am implementing the another function for this select operation. Okay, so now let's try to implement here. So now here my function name is select data. Now again this function is required with argument, it's a query. with a string type, but here my function return type is here as a array, because you have to retrieve your whole data from the database. So now you have to store in array format. Okay, now again this function, the same sequence operations are managed. Okay, so now you have to same code using this function, you have to change simply in between after your query validation, it means prepare v2. So now simply just copy that code and now simply just paste it. Now here this variable is not required because here this function will be written in array format. So now here I am creating, instead of status, data as a array type. So now here array type is any. Now again we have to require one dictionary also. So now here dictionary I'm using as a string and any type. Okay, now then after you have to follow same functionality for the DML operation. So now here you have to use same condition. So now simply again just copy this code here now. So now first you have to require to open your database connection. Now then after you have to require to validate your query. So now for the validate, same you have to copy this function. Now in between, okay, you have to change some code. Okay, so now here I'm using this function for retrieving a data from the database. Okay, so now how to retrieve? So now after this condition, it means your query has been validated successfully. So now what should required? So now here I'm using one loop. Okay, because for the data retrieving in your table, so now for example in table there are three columns: ID, name and city. So now according to column you have to require a loop. Okay, so now one by one you have to get your ID value, name value and the city value. So now I'm using one while loop. So now using for get your column. So now here we have one function SQLite 3 underscore step. So now here write down your statement objects, but this function is returning SQLite underscore row. Okay, now when still we have to use SQLite, okay, but whenever you require to get your column value, row value, you have to use SQLite underscore row. Now here I'm creating a different object for the ID, name and city. So now here for example here I'm creating one object as a student ID. So now in this object we have to store your totally database ID. Okay, means whole ID. So now how to implement? So now first you have to require to convert in a string format. Now for the string you have to use one method. It's a cascading string, it means C string. So now how to get your column value? So now here we have to use one function SQLite 3 underscore column underscore text. Okay, so now here you have to use SQLite 3 underscore column underscore text function. Means this function is used to get your table column value. Okay, so now here this function is again required two arguments. So now first argument is OPQ pointer. So now here you have to pass your statement. Now the second argument is I column, it means index of column. So now here in your table you have to create a three different column, it means ID, then name, then city. So now ID is on a 0 index, name is on 1 index and city is on 2 index. So now you have to require to implement here your column index. So now id it's a 0. Now I will get our student name. So now here again I have to create one another object for the name value. Now again here you have to use same method for this string. So now here SQLite 3 underscore column. So now here write down your statement objects and a index of your name column. So it's a 1. Okay. Now for this city I'm creating one another objects. Okay, so now here I'm converting in string format and then using this method. Okay, it's a C string. So now here you have to use SQLite 3 underscore column. Now write down your statement objects and your city column index. So now here it's a 2. Okay, so now here I'll store your entire ID, name and city in these objects. Okay, now then after I'll to pass this data into dictionary. So now how to use? So now dictionary. So now first I'm store as a student ID. So now here write down your column name. Okay, make sure you have to validate, verify your table column name. So now here ID. So now it's a small ID. The name. So now here I am using it's a small name. It means N small, C small. So now here write down your key name. It's a your column. So now your ID is from your students ID objects. Now then after you have to store your name. So now here I am using name. So now name is from the student name. Then after I'll to store your city in dictionary. So now my city key is city, then the student city. Okay, now so now your dictionary collection is ready. So now in this dictionary your entire data will be stored, but your function is returning array. Okay, so now here again I have to implement one single line. So now this entire dictionary will be pass our array. So now data dot. So now data it means my array. Okay, so now right now here your data is blank, but here I'm pass your entire dictionary into your array. It means data array. So now data dot append. So now here using dictionary. Okay, so now first your entire ID, name and city will be stored in dictionary, and then after your entire dictionary will be stored in your data array. Okay, so now then after you have to execute your query. So using SQLite 3 underscore finalize. Okay, sorry, here actually it's a required in this part. So now SQLite 3 underscore finalize with your statement objects, then close your database connection using SQLite 3 underscore close. Now here your statement. Now again you have to see one error missing a return because your function is returning a array argument. It means here I am returning your data. So now here return your data. Data it means this your array. So now again your retrieve data function is created successfully and now ready to work. So now let's try to implement. So now here I'll get your entire data on this table view. So now how to get it? So now first go to your view controller, and now here first I am creating one array as a student data. Okay, so now here I am creating one global objects, means global array. The name is student data. Okay, then after first we have to retrieve your data, okay, from the database. So now here we have to require one function implementation. So now here I am creating one function select students data. Okay, now in this function you have to retrieve your database, means select query. So now simply in this function you have to create your select query. So now simply select star from students. So now here I'll get whole data from this student table. So now here I'm using star. Okay, now it's not required to print. So now here let's try to operate with your DML operation. So now here I'm creating the objects of DML operation. Now then after here, so now here I'm using our second function, this select data. So now this function is returning array. It means here the entire function, means entire data will be stored in an array. So now how to check this condition? So now here according to array, here I am creating one object, it's a counter. So now according to counter, here DML dot, I'm using a second method for the retrieve data. So now select data. So now write down your query here. So now here I'll to pass str select. Now how to check your condition, key data are is there or not? So now simply here I'm check this condition. So now if your cn it means your array. So now if your cn dot count equal to 0, it means there is no any data in your database. So now you have to print your statement as a error. It means no records found. Okay, otherwise you have to print your entire array. It means cn, it means data. Okay, now how to get your cn value? But here actually I'm retrieving your whole data on table view. So now for this table view, so now using retrieving this function select data, so now this function is returning a array. So now this array value, it means this data value will be stored in our this array student data. So now here I am using directly this student data here instead of cn. So now okay, so now this function will be executed, then your entire data will be stored in this array. It means student data. Okay, so now how to call this function? So now I'm retrieving your data whenever your application will be loaded. So now here in your view did load, I'm using, means I'm call this function, means select student data, means when your view is loaded, then after your retrieve data function will be executed. So now here again you have to change here your student data and student data. Okay, but here let's try to implement this data on table view format. Okay, so now first you have to implement your table method. So now UI table view data source and the UI table view delegates. Okay, so now before we implementing the table view, you have to require the two method of this table view. So now which method? So now here you can see, just fix it. Now these two method are required to implement of our table view. So now how to implement? So now our first method is number of row in section. It means how many rows you want in your table. So now according to your table, it means according to your rows, okay, same rows will be returning on table. So now here I am using return your array. Okay, so now here I am return student data dot count. Now then after let's print your data on the table cell. So now here I'm using this method, cell for row at index path. So now let's try to implement. So now here I'm creating one object for the UI table view cell. Now here I'm using style as a subtitle because I want a student name and city in single cell. So now here I'm using, it's a subtitle. Now use identifier, it's always nil. Now here cell dot text label dot text. So now this label I want the student name, means this. Okay, so now how to retrieve it? So now simply your entire data will be stored in student data array. So now here you can use your student data, but in this student data your entire data id, name and city is stored, but here I've, here in text label I have to retrieve only name. So now here first I'm creating one dictionary. Okay, then first I'll to convert your array into dictionary. Okay, then after you have to access according to your dictionary key. So now here you have to array with index path dot row. Now here this student dictionary, it's a dictionary format. So now here string and any. So now let's see, here I'm converting your student array into student dictionary. Okay, so now according to student dictionary you have to retrieve a specific value of this student table. So now here I'm using student dictionary. Now which value you should return here? So now here I want a name. So now I'm converting again as a string. Now then after I want city also. So now here I'm using cell dot detail text label dot text, and then after here I'm using a student dictionary, and here you have to pass your city key, and now as a string. Now then after you have to return cell. Okay, now let's design your cell. So now here I'm using one cell accessory. So now here I'm using accessory, it's a disclosure indicator. Okay, so now your table execution is done. So now let's try to check your application. Now run your application. Okay, so now your entire data will be print on table view or not. So now let's check. Run your application. So your application is on the way. Okay, so now see, okay, your entire data. Okay, now according to, so now you see in your database table there are three records. Okay, Sanket, Proceed and Avni. So now you have to see in your table there are three rows. Okay, so now these data are from the student table. So now here I am using, it means here I am retrieving your data from your database. But here let's try to check on runtime. For example, here I'm using the id of 6, then name. So now here I'm using this name. For example, here I'm using the student name is Digvijay. Now here the his city name is, so now here the city name is Ahmedabad. Okay, now just click on save. Okay, now refresh your database. So now here this record is inserted in your table database, but on your iOS table view it's not showing. So now what should require? So now here I want on runtime operation, it means update, insert, delete on this table. Okay, so now how to implement it? So now simply you have to call this function, okay, after your insert, update and delete execution. Okay, because this function is returning your entire data. Okay, so now here let's see your insert operation is successfully according to this condition. So now after successfully inserted, I'll to retrieve this function. Okay, it means select student data. Okay, means you have to insert a record, then after this function will be called. Okay, so now same in update. So now here you have to use select data. Now you have to also use in the delete operation. So now whenever you execute any operation like insert, update and delete successfully, then after you have to retrieve your updated value from the database. Okay, now let's check again. So now run your application and see the output. So now just hold it, your application is on the way. Okay. Now you have to see, okay, your fourth record has been displayed on your table view. So now you can see there are 4 records in your database. Now let's try to insert another record. So now let's try with id of 7. Now here name, so now here student name is Nirav and the student city, so now here I am using student city, it's a Pune. Now just click on save button. Okay, but again you have to see, okay, something went wrong. So now again refresh your data. So now your inserted value is stored in your database, but it's not here on your table. So now let's see again. So what's the problem here? So now here I am using, so now if your condition will be true, yeah, exactly. Okay, so now whenever you execute any operation in runtime on the table view, at that time you have to reload your table. Okay, so now how to reload means how to refresh. So now simply just create one layout of your table view. Now here for example, okay, so now here I am creating one outlet of your table view. Then after whenever you execute any operation, that means after that retrieve function, you have to refresh your table, means reload your table. So now here my table outlet, it means my student table, then one method is there, reload data. Okay, now here again simply just copy and paste in wall operation. Now again run your application and see the output. Okay, so now here I'm refreshing our table view after execution of any operation like insert, update and delete. So now using this method you will be refresh your table, okay, on the according to your requirement. So now here you can see there are fifth records are there. So now here you can see, now I'm inserting the new record, the start id, it's a 8. Now here student name is, for example, student name is here Ashok, the city of his Bombay. Now click on save. Yeah, see. Okay, now you can see, okay, you will be see the entire data, it's the data is retrieved from your database, you have to see on your table on runtime. Okay, now here just refresh. Okay, now here I'm inserting the new record like the id is 9, the name is Ramesh and the here the city of Ramesh is Punjab. Okay, now just click on save. So now you can see, okay, on runtime your record has been inserted on your table view. Okay, now here I'm inserting on another record. So now 10, the student name is, for example, here Hiral and the city is, for example, Nagpur. Now just click on save. So now you can see. Okay, so now your insert record will be worked successfully on the table view. Now let's try to see the update and delete operation on runtime. So now here I'm updating this value, it means Nirav value. So now here Nirav is on ID of 7. So now I will change the student name Nirav. So now here first write down your 7. Now instead of Nirav, here I am using Preeti, and the instead of city of Pune, here I am using Baroda. Okay, now just click on update. Now you can see, okay, on runtime your table cell will be updated. Okay, now see, and now let's try to update one another record. So now here I am updating a third record. So now here ID of 3. So now here I want change the student name Prasidh to, so now here I am using Brijesh, and the city, so now here I am using UP. Okay, so now the old value of Prasidh and Bombay, now here I will update. So now here you can see, okay, you can see the Bridges and UP. Okay, now let's try to check the delete operation. So now I want delete a 9th record. So now simply just click on, write down your ID 9th, so click on delete. So now you can see, okay, now after Ashok, the Ramesh, the 9th record will be deleted. Okay, now here again I will delete record 7 or 6 for example. Now simply just click on delete. So now your entire operation is worked runtime on table cell. Okay, so now this is the CRUD operation using SQLite 3 library. So now here in this application we have to create an entire operation like insert, update, delete and select using SQLite library. So now this is the CRUD operation. Now here I am using SQLite library, and this application is also created in a 3-tier architecture, because in current market developing trend a 3-tier architecture, it's a most popular architecture and the designing pattern. So now at that time you have to also use this architecture in your routine application development. So now here I'm using the SQLite library for the CRUD operation as per our requirement. It's insert, update and delete operation. Okay, now here I will retrieve the whole entire data from database. Now here I'm put the whole data on our table cell. So now at that time you have to also implement this table view as per your requirement. So now here this is the example of the SQLite library. Thank you.